AI deep research. It's amazing, except when it's wrong. And why is it wrong? Because AI deep research gives you answers that are based on internet marketing materials. Today we're talking about dashboards that cut through the noise to provide analytics and evidence-based insights. We're exploring blind spots like survivorship bias and how human experts plus AI can turn raw data into rock-solid decisions. So Gareth and Christian from Prescatter, who have led several hundred of these types of projects with brands you know very well, will be showing us how to build data-driven strategies that actually work. Why build databases?
I think everything has to do with our clients wanting to do informed decisions. So essentially, whenever our clients need to understand what regulations are out there, what are the best technologies or technology providers or partners, they need to know that they have all the information they need to make a decision. And many times, the best thing isn't necessarily the most advertised thing. So in other words, there are companies that have the ability to show what they do, publish what they do in different sources. And those are going to be the ones that would appear in quick Google searches or even through ChatGPT. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the best technology. So eventually, yes, the best technologies would come up at the top. But at the moment where our clients need to make a decision with respect to who to partner with, for example, they need to have the whole spectrum of options. So I think that's why building a database that has all of those, it's really important and leads to informed decisions.
It seems like clients are struggling also partly with siloed data. There's a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that they might be sitting on, in addition to new information they're looking to actively capture. So there's definitely a desire to have that information accessible in one location so that they have a clear path or clear direction to answer high value questions, right? They can feel confident that they have a summary of the available information that's evidence-based to inform their decision-making. So a lot of it goes into supporting decision-making and a desire to have sort of a one-stop shop, like a hub to enable that. So I've seen that being a key driver for clients wanting custom dashboards, decision-making tools. And I guess when it comes to building those, right, it helps when they also have a very clear understanding of what's the job to be done with that interface. So if you understand the users, how they're going to be interacting with it, and what type of questions they're looking to answer when they're using that database, it really comes into play.
Data systems for client decision-making.
I think what has brought many clients to us and that has a lot of interest is how you process the data in the database. I think from my point of view, it's not helpful. Like if I make an exhaustive database with all the data that there exists, and it's like a building of data, and I can say, hey, here's all the data. That's typically not useful, right? It's overloading with information. So databases that are able to screen through that information, get you to the insights with, let's say, little effort from the user as possible. Those are the ones that I think drive the biggest interest. And then when it comes to topics, I think many, and this really depends on what the different users are looking for or the different positions they have. So I've seen a lot of interest into the regulations type of databases, regulations and policies and incentives. So it's not easy to navigate that, especially with international enterprises that are looking for operations across the globe, understanding what sort of regulations or permits or incentives there might be or apply to their processes across the world. It's not easy. So databases that compile all that information could be very handy. And then more of the usual, or at least usual for us, the technology databases that have all the different technologies that there exist out there, the providers, I think those are really, really important.
Evidence-based really comes to mind. There's a lot of desire to filter out the noise, right? So databases that are backed by scientific evidence or some type of scientific substantiation are in high demand. Things also like forward-looking assessments. So some type of database or dashboard you can draw clear, quick conclusions from. So there's a lot of interest in these sort of one-page summaries and key takeaways, and then being able to drill down into the evidence to support that recommendation that it arrives at. Some of the other things, I guess, in terms of types that I've seen interest in growing popularity would be things like AI-powered consumer insights databases as well, where companies can track trends and things like that in real time. There's a lot of interest there.
AI deep research versus database-centric approaches.
I do think that there's a lot of value in doing more of an active research process. The deep research tools are good. I find they give you a really good initial framework and perhaps identify some high value spaces to interrogate first. They can also help with cutting out some of the noise that you see, but I'd say when it comes to building these databases, there needs to be another higher order review process where we're looking to cut through noise and bias in the information that we're pulling from. So there's a lot of value in sort of that human in the loop on top of the surface level search.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think, to be honest, the first time I've used some of those AI deep research tools, I was pretty impressed with how quick, even though it might take a few minutes, how quick it can provide a good structured report with multiple sources. But then once you start sort of analyzing it, going into the details, you realize a few things too, that still it provides information that might not be right. And then that even though it has maybe, I don't know, 15, 20, maybe up to 30 sources or links, it still uses primarily just a couple to provide like 95% of the content. So the deep research tools, I think, as Gareth was saying, I think are good for like a first start. And if you are just interested in like surface level type of research or knowledge, but then really to get into what would be actionable insights, you need to go deeper, more sources, QA those sources, make sure that everything is true and there are no hallucinations and things like that. So I still think that there's quite a jump in terms of quality of what AI deep research tool can provide, and then insights that can be extracted from a comprehensive database.
Yeah, I find they're really good at identifying sort of the quick, what do I need to know right now as I start my research into a space. Some of the challenges also are, since you're using secondary information, there can be the issue of survivorship bias as well, right? You're hearing about the success stories, the successful market launches, the wins, the successfully funded rounds, and so on. So there can be a lot of noise and bias around that. It does a good job of trimming out a lot of the bias, but yeah, often what's missing from that search can be what was tried, what's failed, and then why have those things been tried and failed. So you'll find that more in the unpublished space or deeper than deep research from AI.
Carbon capture cost model.
Essentially, with all the data that we compiled, we created a model to calculate the cost of carbon capture based on different parameters. And we actually continuously update our model and run it against real project data so as to increase the accuracy of that model. And once again, we were able to build something like this, let's say relatively easily, because we had all that data that we can trust, and we had it classified. And then it was a matter of running our model against that and see how well it matched. And I think, yeah, this has helped our clients whenever they need to know exact numbers, as you were saying, these analytical tools, and on what or how much these numbers depend on other variables. That's also very relevant, once again, to make these important capital decisions.
PICO framework for life sciences.
On the analytical front as well, Dino, in the life sciences as well, there can be a lot of challenge because there's a lack of a clear structure or standardized method for capturing certain types of data. So one of the databases that we built, this PICO, Patient Population Intervention and Comparisons database, to compare clinical literature and outcomes from it. One of the major challenges there from an analytical perspective was how do you standardize and compare all of these different patient population groups, the interventions, the doses, the active ingredients, how they're standardized, right? Especially when you're talking about nutritional ingredients across the different studies. So a lot of the work on the analytical side goes into defining exactly how you're going to categorize and group and standardize things that go into the database as well.
Addressing database shortcomings with experts.
There's really a critical role in filling in gaps that the secondary research or secondary data alone can't address, right? If all of the information that we needed to make those decisions was published already, somebody would be scraping that information and using an LLM to make that informed decision-making process already, right? And most of the decisions would be made based off of that. So the primary research really fills in a key gap there. I'd say it lets our clients also start from a place of experience rather than starting from the same place as everyone else using that secondary information or published information that's out there. So you can seek to quickly validate, get really current and up-to-date information, right? Very few resources are in real time. So by doing that primary research, you can get a very current and real-time look at the landscape or what you're specifically trying to achieve. And then what I was mentioning before about the survivorship bias as well, right? You'll hear about the success stories, but then you'll also hear about the failures, things that were maybe ideas that didn't come to fruition or things that were tried that ultimately failed for various reasons. And learning about how and why those things failed can be very, very helpful when it comes to successfully launching or setting off in some new direction.
We learned that data isn't just numbers, it's also stories, expert insights, and even failures that never made the headlines. You mean we can't just trust the internet for everything? Next, you'll tell me influencers aren't licensed financial advisors. Well, if you're ready to put this into practice, head over to aiunhype.com and sign up for our newsletter. We share behind-the-scenes tips, strategies, and real-world lessons we've learned from helping companies who are applying these principles in practice. Now, let's get back to Christian and Gareth. AI for unstructured data insights.
It's very easy to extract insights if I have data that are numbers in a column, and then I don't know, have to calculate an average or whatever I have to. That's pretty easy. Now, for instance, in our database, we have thousands of projects, and these failures are the information of those failures. It's difficult to put it into a column that says reason for failure was this, right? So there's a story behind those. What I'm trying to say, and I could read about a few of those projects, 5, 10, maybe 20, but then at number 21, I would forget the first one. So there's no way somebody could really have all that information. So that's, I think, where we need to create these more hybrid tools where we make use of the AI. So the AI is able to read thousands of these descriptions and extract conclusions out of that data. So we need to make sure that there are no hallucinations. We need to train the model so it interprets the data correctly and so on. But that's the way we've been dealing with that approach, right? Like, how can we extract conclusions from things that are not tabulated there and are not just numbers, but we need somebody or something to read it and give us a conclusion. So we created this AI agent that is able to read all of those descriptions and come up with those conclusions.
Right. The AI review capability to interact with transcripts is really key. So completely agree with Christian on that. And then whenever possible, these things are difficult, right? Sometimes on an interview with an expert, you're trying to capture the sentiment. So you might use a Likert score or something like this on a scale from 1 to 10, right? What's your confidence interval in that data? Or something like that you try and quantify to put in the database. But then if you can attach or overlay AI so that you can query the transcript from the conversation, that's tremendously helpful as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're collecting this primary research, and then really the AI has a role to play in kind of extracting kind of the column data that could be numbers or could be one word sentiment or some kind of coding of something in that unstructured data.
I think there's more place for AI to help with this. So and we certainly use it too, and that's also for gathering the information. So I think there's no sense in denying how useful or how quick AI is into some of these things. So what we have done is, once again, a hybrid approach where we use an AI power algorithm to extract information from many different sources, classify that information, but then it works like a funnel where at the end of that funnel, that's where our team of researchers sit and they evaluate what information goes in or not. So they do sort of another round of QAing or making sure that information there is correct. But with the amount of information that there is out there, not using the AI in some of these steps, in my opinion, it's a mistake, because there's a huge efficiency to be gained there. So I think also in bringing the information or identifying the information, AI can be of help.
Turning data into actionable insights.
2 steps here. The first step, the one Gareth was mentioning before, is understanding what the user or the client needs. That's step number 1. So to create something that would provide insights, well, you need to know what those insights need to look like, right? So that's step number 1. And then step number 2, once you know, I don't know, for example, our users need to understand who has the best technology, or where is the best place to set up one of these plants, or what incentives might I be able to get into this industry. So once you understand that, the second step is essentially try to create an environment that makes it as easy as possible for the user to get to those insights. So in other words, once you have a lot of information, I could populate a screen with 1,000 buttons to click and go to different places. But that's going to be so tough that most likely most of the users are going to give up with that first screen. So I need to make it in a way that it's intuitive, it's easy to navigate, and with a few, let's say, clicks here and there, the user will get to that answer that he or she is looking for. So I think those 2 steps are essentially the way to make the actionable insights.
That's right. Yeah, our clients really don't need, most of our clients, I should say, really don't need spreadsheets full of numbers, right? They need clear takeaways. So they might be interested in competitor activity in a space, and there's 1,000 of them to track. Really, we need to home in on the high value, the 10, right, that are most relevant or highest value for them to pay attention to and focus there and start there. The other thing too, I guess going back to the PICO example, was understanding the different types of users that would be interacting with that type of a database, and understanding what are the types of questions the users are going to be asking when they use the tool. So with that in mind, we built, in that instance, 2 distinct pathways for how to interact with a very large database, right? Hundreds of ingredients, clinical trials, and so on. And those were really users that are coming into the tool saying, I know what specific ingredients I'd like to use or are going to be involved in this formulation. Now, what are some of the benefits, right? What are consumers going to feel when they use our product, right? That has those ingredients. And then the other pathway into that, or to interrogate the data set, was, okay, I know that I want the consumer or user to experience this effect. How am I going to achieve that, right? So what needs to go into the formulation? So we built the database and the tools and how you interact with it around those 2 primary use cases. And that really made it much more useful, as opposed to a spreadsheet with simply thousands and thousands of rows, right?
The future. Hybrid human plus AI models.
where we will use the AI for certain applications, but then as Gareth was saying, with a human component there too, to make sure that we are training the model right, that we are overseeing it, that it provides reliable information, and that it's not missing on important things. So I think that for the future, these hybrid models are going to be the thing that work.
Completely agreed on the hybrid models. The other, I'd say, long-term vision, I think these AI tools are going to get much better at pulling factually correct and accurate information from more and more complex data sets, right? So things like scientific publications, I'm seeing a lot of progress there in data extraction from much more difficult to read and triage sources. So I think there's going to be a large burden of reviewing dense technical literature that's going to be taken on by these AI tools. Certainly with the need for the human in the loop still, and the hybrid models persisting. But I think a lot of the data aggregation, initial categorization, and triaging, I see a lot of that being offloaded to AI with an increasing level of accuracy, a much better level of accuracy in the near future.